inviting all types of stakeholders in the tourism value chain to become signatories of this voluntary commitment. This initiative encourages a strategic hierarchy of actions to mitigate environmental impact as effectively as possible. Initially, the signatories commit to eliminate problematic and unnecessary plastics. Next, we call for innovative measures to make the remaining plastics in tourism operation reusable. And finally, the unavoidable plastic waste should be rechanneled through recycling to prevent handle accumulation. Plastics, in essence, are a miracle material, light in weight, capable of containing liquids, and have been instrumental in our societal advancement, including medicine. However, our current usage is far more optimal. We need to make a concerted transition to a circular economy for plastics, and this provides opportunities for creating an upscaling and uptake of many small and medium enterprises and micro enterprises that are going to use this raw material as a material to grow and to develop other products. Furthermore, we must not forget that conventional plastics are fossil fuel derivatives. Hence, by reducing the demand for new virgin plastics and shifting to circular models, we also contribute to reducing our sector's emission. We are immensely grateful to be co-managing the initiative with UNEP, and I would like to extend my thanks to the UNEP team for their exceptional collaboration under the framework of the One Planet Sustainable Tourism Program. The number of signatories of the Global Tourism Plastic Initiative has consistently grown since the initiative launch, with about 50 new signatories each year. And we are certainly one of the most advanced sectors as a whole that is going to be able to support the new negotiations on plastic as Tourism United. This is a testament that the mounting importance that tourism stakeholders attach to the issue of plastic pollution. Signatories also commit to reporting their progress and implementing their commitment. The commitment to transparency is a cornerstone of our initiative. In closing, I wish to express my heartfelt congratulations to the Central Nodal Agency for Sustainable Tourism in India for becoming a signatory today to support the Ministry of Tourism in addressing plastic pollution. I eagerly anticipate welcoming more of you as signatory in the near future. Ladies and gentlemen, let us remember our actions today will shape the world of tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, ma'am. Ladies and gentlemen, the United Nations Environment Programme, UNEP, is the leading global authority on the environment. UNEP's mission is to inspire, inform, and enable the nations and people to improve their quality of life without compromising on the future generations. For over 50 years, UNEP has worked with governments, civil societies, the private sector, the UN entities to address humanity's most pressing environmental challenges, from restoring the ozone layer to protecting the world's seas and promoting a green inclusive economy. And ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to invite Mr. Atul Bagai, Head UNEP India Country Office and Head of Delegation UNEP for the context setting. Let's put our hands together to welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. Honorable Ministers, distinguished delegates of G20, friends from industry and civil society organizations. I think my predecessor from UNWTO has set the context so beautifully. I wonder what value I can add to whatever has already been said by her. But I just thought I'll highlight 2 or 3 points to further set this whole context for today's event, and I'm extremely thankful to the Ministry of Tourism for giving us this opportunity to organize this side event. And I pick up from what Honorable Minister said right in the beginning, citing Adartha Ved and our traditions and our heritage. And I think that's the single most important point all of us, Indians and globally, need to understand that nature is such an integral part of our psyche and of our life on a daily basis that we just cannot ignore it. We need to embrace it. And the war that we are having against nature, we will need to stop. And I think there could be no better example than what Ministry of Tourism has done in the last 2 years by bringing in a very unique sustainable tourism policy. And I really congratulate the Honorable Minister and the ex-secretary Arvind, who really are the two rock stars, for taking this such a forward-looking initiative which not many developing countries have taken. And I think this is a very unique initiative that is also a model and a best practice for the G20 countries. And the most amazing part is that it has got integrated into the G20 communique. I really congratulate the Ministry of Tourism, the Minister, the Secretary, Vidyavati ji, and her team for bringing this whole piece together for the G20 countries. And finally, I would, following what Minister said, and there were a few presentations this morning on the Indian tradition and the Atithi Devo Bhav concept that was talked about. And I would like to take this a little step further, that in our own culture, like we respect Atithi Devo Bhav, we need to start also bringing in Prakriti Devo Bhav, that nature is like God. And if we can integrate that into our system, mainstream it, I think the whole tourism sector will resonate with greater numbers of people coming to India and to various tourist destinations. I again thank the Ministry of Tourism and look forward to some good deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, sir. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we present before you a short video film on Global Tourism Plastics Initiative, GTPI. Thank you very much indeed. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I have the privilege in inviting Ms. Virginia Fernandez Trapa, Program Coordinator, Sustainable Development of Tourism, UNWTO, for the keynote presentation. Her presentation will highlight the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative, its vision, commitments, and recommendations for action on eliminating problematic and unnecessary plastics, the integration of reuse models, and collaboration with suppliers and waste managers. So let's put our hands together to welcome ma'am.
Namaskar, good afternoon. Dear Excellencies, dear delegates, dear participants, dear colleagues, it's really an honor for me to have the opportunity to address you today. I will be sharing recommendations from the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative to shift to a circular economy of tourism, in tourism. Excuse me. As we have heard from the previous speakers, the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative is implemented within the framework of the One Planet Sustainable Tourism Program. This program has a mandate from the United Nations General Assembly to support implementing Sustainable Development Goal 12. This is why we are focused on accelerating sustainable consumption and production to tackle the triple planetary crisis: climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. The Global Tourism Plastics Initiative provides us with a common vision. Eliminate, innovate, circulate is a framework, and we hope that the initiative will enable tourism authorities, destinations, tourism businesses, associations to take concerted action and to lead by example in the shift to a circular economy of plastics. The initiative operates as a voluntary commitment. Excuse me. Operates as a voluntary commitment where signatories commit to taking action in all the areas that you see on the screen. However, not all stakeholders are supposed to do the same thing. We hope that stakeholders can play complementary roles. For example, for a tourism authority, the role would be to integrate circularity of plastics in tourism policies. For a tourism business, such a hotel, the role would be to eliminate as much as possible the plastics in as many areas of the hotel as possible. For a tour operator, we would be thinking about developing experiences that don't use single-use plastics and that collaborate with suppliers that are also committed to the same shared goal. And associations can also play a role, for example, by providing trainings, capacity building, awareness raising, and so on. So besides the size of the problem, which we know is humongous, we should not forget that the recovery of tourism is finally here. This is a fantastic thing. Our forecast indicates that this year already from 80 to 95% of international tourist arrivals will be at pre-pandemic levels. But this also means that there's no time to lose. We really need to drastically change the way we manage plastics so that they are reduced as much as possible, so they are kept circulating in the economy and out of the environment, so that they never become waste. They are a precious material, we should take care of it, make sure that it's revalorized. So, but what do we know about plastics? Because actually, if we want to tackle the problem of plastics, we obviously need to learn more about plastics. So, our executive director said it, conventional plastics are made out of fossil fuels. And actually, the numbers that you find when you look at the bottom of a plastic bottle or when you look at the bottom of a container are telling you which is the polymer that has been used to create that item and whether that polymer or not is recyclable. So if you look, for example, at number 5 or number 6, propylene and polystyrene, those are very difficult to recycle. Nevertheless, we use them in large quantities and we use them as single use. Number 1, PET, polyethylene terephthalate, difficult to pronounce, is the most used plastic in the world. Actually, water bottles are made out of PET and is easily recyclable. However, we know that only 20% of it gets recycled. That's the global average. So how can we identify problematic and unnecessary plastics? They are the plastics that fall in one or more of these categories that you see on the screen. So they are not reusable, nor recyclable or compostable. They contain hazardous chemicals, or they have been manufactured using hazardous chemicals. They can be avoided or replaced while maintaining utility. They can disrupt the recyclability of other items, or they have a likelihood of being littered. So as you see, single-use plastics certainly fall under problematic. But in the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative, we use this definition, problematic and unnecessary plastics, because we believe that it gives us, as a sector, certain flexibility that we need. Let me explain, and let's look at the item which speaks of maintaining utility. Picture a kitchen of a hotel where cling film is used to preserve food, and in that geographical context, actually is mandated by law that cling film is used. Because of sanitary regulations, cling film cannot be eliminated. In this case, cling film is not unnecessary. We wish that regulation could be advanced. We wish that innovation can be delivered so that we can eliminate cling film, but at present time, we still have to use it. So it does not fall under this definition of Global Tourism Plastics Initiative. We aim to be ambitious, but at the same time, we have to be realistic of the context of tourism stakeholders, which is very varied in different parts of the world. So now that the definition is clear, where do we start from? Well, here you see the most wanted, the top suspects that we are proposing that are addressed in priority, and this is not a random selection. Actually, we have used a number of criteria, normally based on consultations with the industry, and criteria are, for example, how prevalent are these items in tourism operations, what's the awareness of tourism stakeholders about the problems that these items pose for the environment, what's the level of control of tourism properties to address these items, and what's the risk of littering. For example, many of these are found on the beach and what's the intensity of their use. So these ones are very, very, like used in very large amounts. We also have category 2. So cling film is there, for example, disposable plates, etc. And we also have category 3. So we are literally drowning in plastic. But I don't want to scare anyone with these lists. Actually, this is how we become aware of the amount of plastics that we have in tourism operations. And the good news is that once we know which plastics we need to tackle, it's easier to find the solutions to tackle them, and the solutions are actually out there. We just need to deploy them. So I hope that we can accelerate in this endeavor. I'd like to invite you to consult this methodology, which we developed within the framework of the initiative, if you wish to find more information about these aspects. Okay, let's move on to step 2, transitioning to reusables. So what principles can we follow to select alternatives to single-use plastics? The most important idea to retain is that we need to reduce single-use regardless of the material. So glass, paper, cardboard, plastic, to be used just once is always going to carry high environmental impacts. We need to promote reusables because the most sustainable product in the world is the multi-use product. And we also need to engage with suppliers, so to ask them about or request from them that they increase the amount of post-consumer recycled plastic inside our plastic items that we use. We need to partner with those suppliers that are committed to the same objective. And for example, once reusables are in place, we need to make sure that our washing systems are efficient, not that we end up creating more environmental pressures because of using massive amount of energy for washing these items than when we used single-use plastics. So we also need to discuss with waste contractors to understand how are we supposed to segregate our waste, taking into account the waste infrastructure available in place. All in all, we need to maximize the opportunities that we have in our own context. And this varies almost at municipal level, the way waste is handled. So I encourage you to look up how it works, where you live, where you operate. Also, something very important to keep in mind is the risk of burden shifting. So we may try to do good and replace single-use plastic with another material. Turns out we end up doing worse than we were in terms of environmental impacts. Why? Because products accumulate environmental impact throughout their whole life, since they are extracted as a raw material until the end of their life. And the impacts are also multi-layered. You have emissions, you have acidification of water, you have other kinds of water pollution, etc., etc. So through life cycle assessments, all these different environmental impacts are analyzed, and you get some sort of scoring of each of the items. For example, replacing a PET bottle with a glass bottle, just for a single use of the glass bottle, if the glass bottle is not recycled, perhaps is going to lead to more environmental impacts than the original single-use plastic bottle. Again, this may vary in the context, but there is a risk. Or because, for example, glass would have used more energy to be produced, and also is heavier, so when you transport it, you're also emitting more emissions. So there are plenty of factors that are to be taken into account. I was, by the way, very happy to see that the bottles that we have in the hotel are replenished with a local purification source. So congratulations for that initiative, Patya. Another example is, for example, a stainless steel glass, which if you use it 20 times, it already has less carbon emissions impact than a plastic cup. And if you use it 140 times, it has less environmental impact than the plastic cup in all environmental categories. Also, bigger bottles are better to serve beverages and water better in environmental terms, less impactful than small ones. So I know this all sounds very complex, but again, we can only start to take consistent action if we understand what we are dealing with. And sometimes, frankly, we just need to ask the right questions to our suppliers and to our waste contractors. We just need to know what to ask them. They have the information, so we have to find out what's the best way to proceed for us in our local context. Perfect, remember, ladies and gentlemen, is the enemy of good. So there's going to be a phase of trial and error. It's okay. We need to be ready to innovate, and we need to be ready to adjust if there are better ways to proceed. So procurement also plays a very important role, of course, in how we think the use of plastics in tourism operations. So we need to shift to circular procurement. What do I mean with this? What I mean is that each purchase has to be evaluated from the point of view of waste. Or to put it simply, how is that product going to end is a question you need to ask yourself before you buy the product and not at the end. We need to rethink if we really need that product, if we can buy it as a service, perhaps, instead of as an item. We need to think if we are going to be able to reuse it, is going to be possible to recycle it, can we get energy back from it, for example, through pyrolysis, and what happens to it when it reaches like an end of life. So to help this decision process, we have tools like this decision tree, for example, that you see on the screen. But in a nutshell, what we need to do is to buy less, buy smarter, and recycle as much as possible. And I'd like to give you a word of caution with regards to biodegradable and compostable plastics, because sometimes we think that it's okay to throw these compostables and biodegradables in the normal waste stream. These products are not to be released freely in the environment. They are still plastic, so they need to be treated as such. They need to go to a recycling facility. They do not break down properly when released in the environment. And we also have a lot of false claims. So while all these get sorted, the claims of compostables and biodegradables, make sure you ask this question to your suppliers. What's going to happen to those products? Are they going to be recycled? I invite you to check this manual if you wish more information in this regard of procurement. And last but not least, as in every sustainability strategy, it's essential that we engage with our guests and with the staff, so they also become part of the project and that implementation is successful. We need to build storytelling around our efforts. We need to inform and educate through campaigns and training. We can pilot nudging techniques to trigger behavioral change. We can reward and incentivize green behavior. Nudging techniques, by the way, are aimed at complementing traditional policy instruments. This is a behavioral science term, which is supposed to help us transform awareness into real action. Have you picture yourself in a situation where you were aware that this was wrong, you still did it, you still bought the bottle. Nudging is going to help you not do that anymore. It's going to help you through display of products, through the way the information is presented, to really transform your awareness into action, to really buy how you think. So we have a good example of a campaign. Sorry, I forgot the last one, which is a very important one. Make it fun, because we're still in tourism, right? So all these things should not come as a burden. And we have a very good example of a campaign, which is the campaign led by the Ministry of Tourism, Travel for Life, of course, in support of Prime Minister Modi's lifestyle for environment. And I wish to commend you on that initiative. It includes a pillar of action on reducing single-use plastics. So with this, I wish to encourage you all to take action. Everyone has a role to play. Tourists, of course, but in the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative, we work mainly with organizations, and we look forward to welcoming you all as part of the GTPI family. So let's take action now. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, ma'am. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we present before you a short video message on plastic pollution challenges and resolution by Ms. Dia Mirza, who is an actor, producer, UN Environment Goodwill Ambassador, and United Nations Secretary General's Advocate for Sustainable Development Goals.
Plastic pollution is one of the major concerns threatening our collective future today. It can alter habitats and reduce the ecosystem's ability to adapt to climate change. Microplastics is a growing threat. They've been found in various human organs and even in the placenta of newborn babies. This is alarming. Governments and industries are taking proactive measures to tackle plastic pollution. Many countries have adopted legislation on plastic bags, and many have introduced rules on single-use plastics. More than 150 organizations have become signatories of the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative and have made ambitious commitments to address plastic pollution. These measures will also need to be complemented by behavioral change and change in the way we consume. There are approximately 8 billion people on Earth today. We can influence every individual to become conscious and take action at their level. A lot could be accomplished, and we can once again live in harmony with nature. I congratulate the Ministry of Tourism, Government of India, UNEP and UNWTO for advancing actions to address plastic pollution. Let's come together as one world, one family to beat plastic pollution.
Thank you very much indeed. And ladies and gentlemen, with that we now move towards the next session, which is the panel discussion session, which will involve discussions on destinations and tourism businesses, illustrating the policies and solutions they implemented to eliminate the single-use plastics, promote the uptake of reusable alternatives, as well as increase recycling of plastics and communicate to tourists. The esteemed panel includes representatives from select member countries of G20 who will be sharing views on best practices of plastic waste management in the tourism sector. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite our distinguished moderator, Mr. Atul Bagai, who is the country head for UNEP India office. Previously, as a career diplomat, Shri Bagai rose to the Director Ozone in Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change, Government of India. He worked on various senior positions in the state of Uttar Pradesh and the central government. As a UN veteran, he has spent over 2 decades spearheading challenging assignments in regions across South and Southeast Asia and the Pacific Islands. Let's put our hands together to welcome sir. I would now like to invite our eminent panelist, Mr. Arvind Singh Ji, who is the former Secretary, Ministry of Tourism. Joined the Indian Administrative Services in 1988. His last assignments with the Government of India were as Secretary Tourism and Chairman, Airports Authority of India. A very warm welcome to you, sir. I would like to invite Dr. Franz Tego. He is a Senior Advisor to the Ministry of Sustainable Tourism and Conservation and Acting Deputy Minister for Destination and Infrastructure Development, has earned various degrees in Hospitality Education and Hospitality Management. A very warm welcome to you, sir. May I now invite our eminent panelist, Mr. Nakul Anand, Executive Director, ITC Hotels and Chairman of the Federation of Association in Indian Tourism and Hospitality, Faith, who pioneered the concept of responsible luxury, providing luxury services without compromising the Mother Earth. A warm welcome to you, sir. Inviting Mr. Anurag Bhatnagar, Chief Operating Officer, Leela Palaces Hotels and Resorts. He has worked across brands like Marriott, St. Regis, West Hotels, the Ritz-Carlton and Oberoi Hotels, and since he joined Leela in 2020, 4 new hotels have been opened and positioning of the brand has increased. A warm welcome to you, sir. I would now like to invite Ms. Shirisa Chandna, Vice President, Learning and Development and Sustainability at the Indian Hotels Company, IHCL. In addition to her portfolio of tasks related to talent development, she is also responsible for designing and co-creating programs to address environmental oneness, including energy use, water conservation, reduction of pollution, and waste and preservation of biodiversity. A very warm welcome to you, ma'am. And may I also invite our eminent panelist, Mr. Amitabh Khosla. He is Country Director, India, International Air Transport Association, ITA. ITA is the global trade association for the airline industry, which promotes safe, secure, and efficient air transportation on behalf of its 300 member airlines, which carry 83% of world's scheduled international airline traffic. A warm welcome to you, sir. And ladies and gentlemen, with those words of introduction, may I now hand over to our distinguished moderator to kindly carry forward the proceedings of this session. And before I hand over to you, sir, may I kindly request you to conclude the session in about 60 minutes. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Certainly, I'll try my best to conclude this in 45 minutes because I know we are running late and there is some amazing programs that Vidyavati ji has organized for all of us, and I'm sure I would not like all of you to miss that. But I would like to welcome all of you for this very special session on plastics and the Global Plastics Initiative. And a lot of you from the tourism sector would be thinking, what is UNEP doing in a WTO meeting or a Ministry of Tourism meeting, and why is UNEP wanting to talk about all this? But as the minister had said in his opening statement, that nature is something that is so integral to our being that each and every sector in any government or in our lives impinges upon environment and environment impinges on that. And I think that's the reason why UNEP becomes an agency that becomes a cross-cutting agency. And I'm very happy that the G20 presidency of India has recognized this very important element that environment runs through all the sectors. And you'll be happy to note that all the working groups, all the 13 working groups that have been set up have in fact embraced the environmental dimension and sustainable dimension very, very forcefully. And I must say that I've attended all the four tourism working group meetings. There has been no other working group that has embraced environment and sustainability so forcefully and so beautifully. And in fact, I've attended more tourism working group meetings than I've attended the environment working group meetings, to the displeasure of the Ministry of Environment. But I felt...
But to the pleasure of our
But I felt that this was one sector that was so very critical for India, for the G20 countries, and the fact that Arvind and the Honorable Minister introduced last year the Sustainable Tourism Policy, under which framework we are going to have our discussions today, that one needed to align with and support in as good manner as possible. So we have a very distinguished panel today. We have panelists from the industry, from the aviation industry and the hotel industry. We have panelists from the government. And we have a very good audience, and I'll try to see that if we can get at least one or two audience to come up with some suggestions or some ideas. And the focus of today's panel discussion, I would like to focus more on solutions, and my request to the panelists would be to focus more on the solutions rather than the problem, because the problem has been laid out in the context setting by UNWTO and also in the presentation, a beautiful presentation that Virginia made. And I'll start with no better person in our country than Nakul Anandji to talk about, and when I was discussing with him, he said he was talking about sustainability in tourism industry way back in 1992. And I hadn't even joined UNEP by then, I didn't know what environment was. But there was this group that was thinking of environment and sustainability. And in fact, we are very proud that he also joined the GTPI a little while back. And we are very proud that he's associated with that. And they've already taken so many measures to address this issue of not only plastics, but the overall sustainability, including food systems. And that's a very important aspect of the work that they're doing. And my question to Nakulji, is that in this context, can you share with us the progress that you've achieved in implementation of the GTPI on the plastic side? Also, I'm sure you must have faced a lot of challenges while implementing it, and what were those challenges? And I think more important is Virginia's presentation talked about this amazing initiative, Travel for Life. How do you think the consumers, the tourists, took to this initiative? Is there a feedback that you're getting from that? Nakulji, you have about 5 minutes?
5 minutes, okay.
Yeah, on the outer side.
I'm quite used to it. I was in Nara, Japan some time back, and I had Virginia there who monitors you by the second. And I was more scared of looking at her than the screen, so should I overshoot my time? So anyway, I'm quite used to it now. I've been well trained by UNWTO. But thanks, I'm grateful for your kind words, etc. Yes, it's been an honor and a privilege. I don't think we would have reached where we are today if we had not joined the Global Tourism Plastic Initiative. A lot of credit goes to my colleague Vinaika, who's our Executive Vice President, and I had the honor of bringing him here with me to get into this. Let me just begin by making a statement and don't want to preach to the converted, and you said that no gyan, the facts are known, the problems are known of 8 million and this, that, how many tons go into the ocean, what will happen, and focus on solutions. But I think just one point that is so important, and I read it somewhere, and I think continuously I reiterate it at every session on sustainability that I talk, and that is, if I may quote, that we are the first generation to feel the impact of sustainability, and we are the last that will be able to do something about it. And therefore, the clock is ticking, and the more and more we do about it, there's no end to what we can do about it. If I may, before I come to your question, if I may, and there's no end, if I may say that when we began our journey as Responsible Luxury, and believe me, I'm not selling the organization, I'm selling the commitment to sustainability, and happy to share whatever, there are no secrets in the industry on this. We said, first, let's target platinum-rated buildings for all our hotels. We became the only chain in the world to have 24 platinum-rated hotels. Our next step, Vinaika and I discussed, and we said, what next? We said the next step is to be carbon neutral. But to be carbon neutral, you have to be platinum-rated. So we then began to convert those 24 the platinum-rated, we today have 12, carbon neutral, only 12 hotels in the world that are carbon neutral, and if I may take leave of modesty, those are ours. A couple of years back, we began our journey, and I don't use the word single-use plastic elimination. I'm constantly reminded it is mitigation, right? Elimination would be the wrong word to use, etc. We took stock, and Naika came to me with a list and said, if you were to run through housekeeping to everywhere, what are the number of items that a hotel uses that are single-use plastic? He made a list, and I still remember it ran into pages. There were 150 of them. And we then realized that there was no one-size-fits-all. We had to break this up and categorize this into various strategies. Some of our learnings came from the Global Tourism Plastic Initiative, etc. So the first thing we began to do on that list was began to tick off what are the things that we can do away with. Interestingly, surprisingly, to our surprise, we could remove 35 or 40 of them. You could replace a toothbrush with a bamboo toothbrush. Now, so far, but let me give you the positive side of it. So far, and hotels will know, we cannot afford to keep the most expensive toothbrush, so we don't get comments on our toothbrush. If at all you get negative, that you could have kept a better quality or the bristles weren't good. But now that we replaced it with bamboo, we started getting positive feedback. We are so happy to see that you're using environment-friendly toothbrushes. I'm just giving you one example. Therefore, a number of items like PET bottles, we started our own water plant. We were the first one. We called it Shunya Aqua. Shunya means zero, aqua water. So that water has traveled 0 kilometers. Every hotel of ours has its own water bottle plant, so the water has not traveled at all. Combs were removed. Again, combs were replaced by wooden combs. Again, AFC certified combs, etc. And a number of such items were removed. Once we got to the end of this list, we removed that this is all that we can remove. The others would begin to affect guest satisfaction. At the end of the day, we've always been taught, right, that you can trim the fat but don't cut the muscle, right? We can go so far in the service business and no more. So the next strategy that we adopted was to increase the SKU, the stock keeping units. So by taking from smaller, if you got into bigger bottles, they become recyclable. So in a number of items, be it mineral water in staff cafeteria, be it in some of the chemicals that came or the supplies that came, replaced it by very large stock units, and if the SKU was large enough, it's very easy to replace it and recycle it, etc. So 2 things achieved. We first eliminated what we caught, then we got into SKUs and replaced the SKUs. The third one was the toughest one, which was multi-layered plastic. We first reduced all the packaging we could. You were surprised to see that of the 45 items that we thought we would need to look at least 30 to 35 of them had what I call over-packaging. So we first reduced the packaging. After reducing the packaging, we were still left with MLP. MLP still does not have a solution, but we follow end-of-life traceability for it and see that what we can do till the end of life. And last but not the least, the fourth thing that we did was greening of the supply chain, that began to work with our supply chain and said we will not accept A, B, C, D, E, F. On every parameter, we have a greening clause now on our purchase order. What are our greening conditions that come? The sum total, the sigma of these 4 items, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Today, I can proudly say that we are 99%, free of all single-use plastic. We are 100% free of single-use plastic, more or less, including mitigation, etc. We recycle 99% of our waste. And in terms of plastic that we serve, there's 2.5 lakh kgs annually that we save. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, Nakalji. And I think you raised the point very well, that we are the first generation to see the impact, and we might be the last generation to be told that we have not done anything. And I think the actions you're talking about, and I think the most important point I found in what you said was the first activity you did of stock taking of 150 items. And I think that's the most essential. And I would suggest that that exercise that you've done, of course, all the big hotel chains, some of them represented here, would have done similar exercises. But there's a whole chain of MSME hotels, and they could do a lot advantage from the work that you've done. If somehow we can disseminate that to the smaller hotels down the supply chain, that will be a very useful thing. Moving forward, I'll still keep up with the hotel industry that is there, and Anurag, I would since you are also honorable member of the GTPI and having signed it, and we are very proud to be associated with you. But when you signed the GTPI, you had set some very, very ambitious targets to be fulfilled by 2023. And you, in fact, also talked about how you would work with your suppliers in the supply chain. So my question is that what has been your approach on engagement of all the relevant stakeholders, including the supply chain, your staff, because a lot of capacity building needs to be done, but more important also the clients, in terms of how you've involved them in these efforts. If you could shed some light on that.
Sure, thank you, Atul. Great to be seated next to Mr. Nakul and obviously attempting to walk.
Can you speak into the mic?
Yeah, baby steps in his footsteps. So I think Mr. Anand has already spoken about a lot of stuff that, which I would call them as category 1 changes. And I think as part of our commitment to GTPI, those were the initiatives that we took, which I could call them probably as low-hanging fruits. We were able to replace almost 120 to 135 tons of plastic by simply putting in our bottling plants, which we call Ojasya, which is vitality of life. We were able to create our own brand for room amenities where we were packaging, which earlier we were using plastic, in terms of, our scent program, our shampoos and conditioners, where we also saved almost 35 to 40 tons of plastic again, plus all the other stuff that Mr. Anand has spoken about in terms of using bamboo as a replacement versus plastic migration. But I think the most critical thing was, how do we create awareness and how do we measure our performance? I think people get it, but in our business, if something is not measured, it never really gets managed or never get done. So I think it was very important for us to engage all the stakeholders, starting from the general managers of the hotel, ensuring that these measurable goals were built into the part of the balanced scorecard. So it was not just left to the engineering, housekeepers, and kitchen stewarding and chefs alone, but it should have really mattered to the general managers. We also, from the corporate compliance and policy standpoint, created a senior position, senior leadership roles that rolls up to me on ESG to ensure that this was something that was not good to have, but something that is very, very critical and mandatory as a part of our business plan, and something that we really do. We rolled out a policy which is easily, I hope, easily understood. Two policies actually. One was on waste management and waste segregation, so that even our rank and file associates understood the various color coding and the bins and segregation, and ensuring that plastic doesn't end up in landfills. And we had actual targets given to each one of them, which we monitored. So I think on the associate side, the training was also very key. We signed up with NPC, and more than 300 man-hours of training was given to all our associates, and now we are going ahead and tying up for ISO 14001 training as well, to take it to a next level for energy management systems and plastic removal. So all of this, I think, and I think somebody mentioned making it fun, making it more engaging with storytelling. That's what we have attempted to do, and I know as part of our commitment, we still have 6 more months. Coming back quickly, taking a leaf out of what Mr. Anand said in terms of supply chain management, that to us was a slightly more complex job, because we had to kind of retro-correct many things, ensure that our vendor valuation assessment and engagement was higher. We had to create the vendor protocols to ensure that our partners ensured that only recyclable plastic was being used, and something that could be measured and qualified as well. From the guest standpoint, more and more consumers and guests, I believe, are now more mindful of how they consume luxury and how the impact of their travel that it has on the environment. So that to us was, I think, the easier bit. The more propaganda is another word that we use, repetition of the same message. Certain shocking statements that by 2050, there will be more plastic in the oceans than the fish. Some of those statements and some of the content that is available has been helpful for us to create a kind of a 360-degree stakeholder engagement, and that's been our approach, basically.
Thanks a lot, Rangan. I think you raised 2 very, very important points. One, on the overall ESG framework, and that's now becoming something that the whole industry in all sectors are taking up. But more important was the fact that within your business planning, you were able to bring in a whole monitoring and verification kind of a mechanism, and that was something that is very, very important. I was just thinking of changing the track a little bit, Shirisha. If I have your permission, I go to the aviation industry so that it doesn't become monotonous, and I come back to you after that. And we have Amitabh with us from the International Air Transport Association. And aviation certainly plays such an important role in the tourism sector, but also in the whole carbon footprint that the aviation sector has, which is so well known. But we would like to know more about IATA's work to support tackling this whole challenge of plastics, and also what actions can be already implemented by airlines despite the very complex international and national regulatory systems that we have. How is airline industry trying to address this problem?
Sure. Thank you very much for inviting IATA in for the session. And taking a leaf from your question, I thought what I would do is provide you with a background in terms of the issue of single-use plastics on board in an aircraft cabin. And also talk to you about what is the airline industry, and as well as IATA in particular, doing to address the issue of plastics on board.
In 5 minutes.
Sure. Just to start off, and this is really about the IATA-UNEP new collaboration, a new MOU, which has been signed in the past fortnight itself on the sidelines of the IATA AGM in Istanbul, which really talks about focusing both organizations, IATA and UNEP, to focus on reduction of SUPs, single-use plastics, plus also increase the circularity of plastics in the airline industry. And one of the goals for that collaboration is, in fact, to come out with a joint guidance which will include an overview of regulations, which will include guidance on what are the measures to be taken to reduce single-use plastics in the airline industry, as well as best practices which can be adopted by both the industry as well as the regulators. So that was really to talk to you about what is IATA doing of late in this subject. So this was really a collaboration on this exact theme of plastics in aviation. In terms of the background on issue, I think it's really a picture of 4 parts. One is that there is plastic on board an aircraft. So, there's recognition of that. Second is that airlines are doing a whole lot in terms of addressing that issue. Third is that there are a few things which come in the way at this point in time, including the one that you spoke about, which was divergent regulations, but also, I think, getting the entire supply chain in order. And last is that what do we need to do? So just to, we've all seen on board, on the flights that we take, that there is plastic. And there are plastics which are easier to replace and easier to substitute, which includes, cutlery, and it includes the PET bottles for water. That already the airlines, many an airline have already taken action on that, and the others have a roadmap to address that. But there is also plastic which is critical for this industry, for the nature of this industry. And it's difficult to replace and substitute, which would include the cabin waste bags, or even the security tamper-proof airport duty bags, or even the life vests and life jackets. So there is plastic on board, but the airline industry, making airline cabins sustainable, is a big priority for the airline industry, and you would see a whole lot of initiatives already undertaken, but also underway. And it stems not just from the individual ESG goals that an airline company may have. It's also not just simply on account of the leadership role that airlines play in addressing sustainability, be it in carbon offsets, use of sustainable aviation fuel, etc. But increasingly, it's becoming a business necessity. There was a recent November 2022 survey amongst passengers from some 11 countries, which said that 75% of the passengers would feel better about flying if there was no plastic on board. So increasingly, it's being driven from the demand side as well. And so there is plastic on board. Airlines are doing what they can